In Indonesia, a case of a maid tortured by her employer has sparked outrage. Under the current legal framework, maids are not classified as workers, which forces them to work in an unregulated economy. This leaves them vulnerable to abuse.
Beaten, raped and forced to eat animal waste. 24-year-old Siti Khotima was tortured for months by her employer.
My boss poured boiling water on me. They later chained me on both my legs, my arms and my neck. They also used handcuffs. My head was smacked to the wall and the floor. I ate once a day. If I was still hungry, they told me to eat dog feces.
Siti wanted to help her parents pay back debt. Last year, she found a job to work as a domestic helper in the capital, Jakarta. It turned out to be a hellish experience. Just a few weeks after her arrival, she was accused of petty theft that led to abuse by her employers and other workers. After 8 months of painful ordeal, she was sent to her home to Central Java.
When I opened the door, I found my daughter. She was waving, crying soundlessly. I got back to her room and woke my husband up and told him our child is home, but she's dying. He immediately jumped off the bed.
The family took the case to the courts. Her 70-year-old employer was jailed for 4 years and 7 others were sentenced to jail time of 3.5 years.
I couldn't do anything about the punishment given by the judges. The judges had decided to send them to prison for short periods of time, but it was very, very light. It is not fair to me. The imprisonments are nothing compared to what had happened to me.
Siti's case is not unique. Indonesia does not have laws to protect domestic workers. This affects nearly 4 million people, mostly women.
Domestic workers are trapped in a system that is biased in gender, social class, and race. It is like domestic feudalism. And all of these create a form of slavery.
A domestic worker bill has remained in limbo for nearly 2 decades. Analysts say even if the bill is approved, it would mainly cover workers that are recruited by agents to work overseas.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, as such cases actually happen in many places. There is also a cultural problem, where such cases are seen as a domestic matter. We want to transform this in the new law. This is not merely a domestic matter, this is humanity.
Siti says her fight will not stop till a law is passed that truly protects domestic workers. She wants to be the last one who suffered.
And joining me now for more from Jakarta is Deputy Director of Amnesty International Indonesia, Wirya Adiwena. Mr. Adiwena, we've just seen the case of Siti Khotima and the torture she suffered at the hands of her employer. Can you give us a sense of how big this problem is in the country?
Yes, of course. The case that you have referenced, the case of Siti Khotima, is a major tragedy. She was tortured. She was abused. She was very poorly treated by her employer. And the worst thing about it is actually this is not the first case that had happened against the domestic workers in Indonesia. And it is very saddening to see that even after previous cases where similar treatment had occurred against domestic workers in the country, no holistic, comprehensive protections for domestic workers have been established. It had been years and years and years of fighting, of advocacy by civil society organizations, but unfortunately, there is not much progress to be seen until today.
Based on what we know in our report, something like 20 years is what we're talking about. We've been talking about a bill to protect domestic workers. Why is there no law yet, despite these instances, as you have elaborated?
Well, we can speculate as to why the bill has not been assigned by the parliaments. And the thing is, I think what the question says we need to ask then is what more it should take for the bill should be signed. We have seen tragedies after tragedies after tragedies, time and time and time again. The current situation simply is unthinkable. For Indonesians, what happened to Siti Khotimah is a major tragedy, but it is nothing new. We have seen news about these kind of situations before. And for me personally, whatever reasons that the bill has not been pushed forward is simply unacceptable.
What you're basically saying is that there is a lot of outrage and there's a lot of sympathy as well for Siti Khotimah and others like her, but not enough pressure on politicians to actually introduce laws to protect domestic workers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what does that say about society and how society views domestic workers?
I think in Indonesia, of course, we have seen a lot of domestic workers around our lives. I think for upper middle class society especially, it has been a common facets of our life. A lot of middle class families have domestic workers to help them with. But the thing is, I think right now we are looking at better understanding and better acceptance that domestic workers are workers, that they are also in dire needs of decent working environment, that their safety and security as an employee should be protected and guaranteed by the government as well as by the employers. I think more and more people are in understanding of that situation. And I think there should be enough political incentives for the parliament or for the government to push through with this bill. It simply is unthinkable for society to let cases like this go again. The fact is in front of us right now. There is, as you said, massive moral outrage of the situation. Right. What else do we need?
We'll leave it there for the time being, but thank you so much for joining us today on this subject, Wirya Adiwena.